In the marble lobby of Brightmind Biotech, 6-year-old Maya Hayes stood frozen amid dozens of rushing employees. Her small body trembled. Tears streamed down her face, but no sound came out. She was silent in her terror, lost in a sea of adults who never looked down. A man in a janitor's uniform approached her slowly. His hands moved in deliberate signs, forming shapes and gestures with a gentle precision that seemed incongruent with his weathered appearance. "Don't touch my child," the voice tore through the crowd. Sophie Hayes, CEO of Brightmind Biotech, charged forward and blocked him with her body. Her tailored suit and commanding presence created an instant barrier between the janitor and her daughter. But the man didn't step back. His hands continued their silent dance. And then, impossibly, Maya's hands lifted. She signed back. "I'm okay." The lobby fell silent. Everyone stared. In that moment, something shifted in the carefully constructed universe Sophie had built around herself and her daughter since the accident. Maya had communicated, truly communicated, for the first time in over a year. Sophie Hayes was 32 years old and the youngest CEO in the biotech industry. Just 2 hours earlier, she had stood in the Brightmind boardroom, coolly informing her executives about their upcoming $2 billion IPO. VoxBridge 2.0, their revolutionary communication device for speech-impaired patients, would transform the medical technology landscape. The timing was perfect. The market was ready. "We have 14 days, she had told them, her voice steady and confident. 14 days to secure the future of this company. What she didn't say was that for all her professional success, for all the accolades and magazine covers calling her the future of biotech, Sophie Hayes went home every night to silence, the kind of silence that echoed with absence. 1 year ago, an explosion in the Brightmind research lab had killed her husband, Lucas, and left Maya without a voice. The trauma had stolen the little girl's ability to speak. Doctors said it was psychological, selective mutism triggered by extreme trauma. Time might heal it, or it might not. Since that day, Sophie had changed. She became colder, sharper, obsessed with control. She built walls around herself and around Maya. No one got close. No one was allowed to. She told herself it was protection, but deep down she knew it was fear. Fear of losing someone again, fear of not being enough. Every night, Sophie sat by her daughter's bed in their Manhattan penthouse and watched her sleep. She whispered apologies into the dark. She blamed herself for the explosion, for not being there, for not protecting Lucas, for not saving Maya's voice. The guilt was a weight she carried every hour of every day. Connor Reed was 36 years old, and he mopped floors in the building where Sophie ruled. But that wasn't who he used to be. 5 years ago, Connor had been a speech therapist and tech innovator. He had founded a company called VoiceSign, which developed an AI system that translated sign language into spoken words in real time. It was revolutionary. It gave voice to the voiceless. His wife, Elise, had been a teacher for deaf children. She believed in his work. She believed in him. Together, they were going to change the world. But then Veritech, a corporate giant, came in as a partner. They promised funding, distribution, global reach. Connor trusted them. He signed papers he didn't fully read. And then overnight, they took everything. They claimed ownership of the technology through a contract clause Connor had noticed. They locked him out of his own creation. The legal battle drained him. He lost his company, his savings, his reputation. The media called him a fraud, a man who had tried to steal his own invention. Elise couldn't bear it. The shame, the betrayal, the collapse of everything they had built. One night, she took her own life. Connor found her in the morning. His world ended that day. He was left with his 8-year-old son, Sam, and nothing else. No money, no career, no future. He took the only job he could find, janitorial work. He told himself it was temporary, but temporary became months, then years. Every morning at 4 a.m., Connor woke in his cramped Brooklyn apartment to make breakfast for Sam. The boy was resilient, smart, and kind. He had learned sign language from his mother before she died, and he still practiced it occasionally, though less and less as time passed. Connor was proud of him, but the guilt never left. He had failed Elise. He had failed his dream. Now, in the Bright Mind lobby, Connor watched Sophie Hayes usher her daughter away. He had recognized the little girl instantly, not just because she was the CEO's daughter, but because he had seen that particular kind of silence before. It was the silence of trauma, of words trapped inside with no way out. He hadn't planned to approach her. Every instinct told him to stay invisible, to keep his head down, to remain unnoticed as he had carefully trained himself to do these past years. But when he saw her standing alone, trembling, he couldn't help himself. What he didn't expect was Maya's response. She knew sign language, and not just any sign language, but the specialized system he had developed for trauma-induced mutism. A system that had never been released to the public. A system that had been part of VoiceSign's proprietary technology. That night, Sophie reviewed the security footage. She watched the moment again and again. The janitor's hands moved with precision, with purpose. He wasn't guessing. He was fluent. And then she noticed something else. The signs he used weren't standard ASL. They were part of a specialized system, one designed specifically for children with trauma-induced mutism. It was a system she had researched desperately a year ago, looking for anything that might help Maya. But she had found almost nothing except one name, Voice Sign 1, a prototype that had never been released to the public. She pulled the janitorial staff records. Connor Reed, 36 years old, no criminal history, employment references from 3 other buildings, standard background check. Nothing unusual, but Sophie didn't stop there. She ran his name through a deeper search, and that's when she found it. News articles from 5 years ago. Tech innovator Connor Reed accused of patent fraud. VoiceSign founder loses company in legal battle. The voice maker who fell from grace. She read every article. She saw his face in older photos. Clean cut, smiling, standing next to a woman and a young boy. She read about the suicide of his wife. She read about the collapse of his company. And she read about Veritech. Her hands went cold. Veritech. She knew that name. Brightmind Biotech had purchased an AI communication system from them 2 years ago. It was integrated into their medical devices for patients with speech disabilities. The system was called VoxBridge, but the core technology, the underlying algorithm, was something Veritech had acquired from a smaller company, a company they had absorbed and dismantled. Sophie opened her acquisition files. She found the original contract, and there it was. Voice Sign Technologies, purchased by Veritech. Rights transferred. Original founder, Connor Reed. As she dug deeper into the files, Sophie uncovered something that made her heart skip a beat, a series of emails between her late husband Lucas and Connor Reed, dated shortly before VoiceSign's acquisition. They had been collaborating on adapting the technology specifically for trauma-induced mutism in children. In the last email, Lucas had written, "Connor, what you've created could revolutionize how we help these kids. I'm eager to see where we can take this together." Sophie sat in her office until midnight, staring at the documents. The man who mopped her floors had invented the technology her company was built on and had worked with her husband. And she hadn't known. The world hadn't known. He had been erased. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stood in Maya's doorway and watched her daughter breathe softly in the dark. She thought about the janitor in the lobby, about the way he had looked at Maya, not with pity, not with curiosity, but with understanding. He had seen her daughter not as broken, but as someone who needed to be heard. And for the first time in a year, Maya had been heard. Sophie didn't know what to do with that. The next morning, Sophie waited in the maintenance area of the building. When Connor arrived for his shift, She stepped forward. Mr. Reed, a word, please. He followed her to a small conference room, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes held a wariness that came from years of expecting the worst. You know sign language, Sophie said, not a question. Yes. Not just any sign language, a specialized system for trauma-induced mutism. Connor's face remained impassive. Yes, Sophie took a breath. I want to hire you, to teach my daughter, to teach me. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by caution. I'm already employed here. I'm offering 3 times your current salary. I don't want your money, Ms. Hayes. Sophie wasn't used to people turning down her offers. Then what do you want? Connor looked at her directly for the first time. If I agree to teach Maya, you need to learn too. Both of you, together. That's my condition. Why? Because your daughter doesn't need another specialist who sees her as a problem to fix. She needs her mother to meet her where she is. The words hit Sophie like a physical blow. For a moment, she couldn't speak. And one more thing, Connor added. I know who you are. I know you're the CEO of Brightmind, and I know your company uses Voxbridge technology. Sophie's spine stiffened. Is this some kind of blackmail? Connor shook his head. No, it's full disclosure. I want you to know exactly who you're hiring. He paused. And I knew your husband. We were working together before the Veritech acquisition. Sophie's composure faltered. Lucas never mentioned you. The collaboration was just beginning. We had plans to develop specialized applications for children with trauma-induced mutism. Connor's voice softened. When I saw Maya in the lobby, I recognized her from the photos Lucas had shown me. I knew what had happened to him, to both of you. The first lesson took place that evening in Sophie's penthouse. The space was immaculate, all clean lines and modern furniture, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. It felt more like a museum than a home. Connor arrived in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, a stark contrast to the minimalist luxury surrounding him. Maya sat on the couch, watching him with wide eyes. We'll start with the basics, he said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. He motioned for Sophie to join them. She hesitated, then awkwardly lowered herself to the carpet, careful to maintain her composure even in this undignified position. Connor's hands began to move, forming simple signs. Hello, my name is Connor. What is your name? Maya's hands lifted immediately, signing back with unexpected fluency. Sophie watched, stunned. She already knows quite a bit, Connor explained. Now it's your turn. Sophie's first attempts were clumsy, her corporate precision failing her as she tried to shape her hands into unfamiliar positions. Maya giggled silently at her mother's mistakes, the first genuine reaction Sophie had seen from her in months. It's not funny, Sophie said, but found herself smiling despite her words. The doorbell rang, interrupting them. Sophie's assistant entered with urgent documents requiring her signature. The board needs these for the IPO filing, the assistant explained. As Sophie reviewed the papers, Connor continued working with Maya. When Sophie finally returned, she found them signing animatedly about dinosaurs, Maya's face alight with interest. She loves the T-Rex, Connor explained, thinks they got a bad rap in the movies. Something twisted in Sophie's chest. How had this stranger discovered something about her daughter that she hadn't known? The lesson continued, but was interrupted by another phone call. This time from Dr. Eleanor Wright, Brightmind's co-founder and Sophie's mentor. The board is asking questions, Sophie, Eleanor said. They've seen the security footage from the lobby. Who is this janitor approaching Maya? He's helping her, Eleanor. He knows a specialized sign language system. A pause. Is this the voice sign founder? Connor Reed? Sophie's grip tightened on the phone. How did you know? I've been in biotech for 40 years, dear. I make it my business to know about revolutionary technologies that mysteriously disappear. Eleanor's voice softened. I've had concerns about Voxbridge's origins for some time, but the board wouldn't listen. Be careful. If Voxbridge is built on stolen technology, and that comes out before the IPO, I know, the stock would tank. Not just the stock. People's lives depend on our medical devices. This is bigger than money. After Sophie hung up, she returned to find Connor preparing to leave. Same time tomorrow? He asked. Sophie nodded, then hesitated. Did you know that your technology was being used in Voxbridge? Connor's expression hardened slightly. I suspected. Now I know. Why didn't you sue? Why are you working as a janitor when your invention is worth billions? Because legal battles don't pay the rent, and Sam needs stability more than he needs vindication. Connor picked up his bag. See you tomorrow, Ms. Hayes. The next lesson was scheduled at Central Park. Sophie arrived with Maya to find Connor already waiting, but he wasn't alone. A small boy stood beside him, thin with serious eyes and Connor's same steady gaze. This is Sam, Connor explained. My regular sitter is sick. I hope it's not a problem. Before Sophie could respond, Maya's hands were already moving, introducing herself to Sam. To Sophie's surprise, Sam signed back fluently. My mom taught me, Sam explained when he caught Sophie watching. Before she died. The children moved to a nearby playground, communicating in their silent language while Sophie and Connor watched from a bench. I'm sorry about your wife, Sophie said after a moment. Connor nodded. I'm sorry about your husband. They sat in silence, watching their children. Maya was smiling, actually smiling, as she and Sam took turns on the swings. She hasn't smiled like that since the accident, Sophie said quietly. Sam was the same after his mom died. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't smile. Connor's voice was soft. Children are resilient, but they need bridges back to the world when trauma cuts them off. Is that what you're building? A bridge? I'm trying, for both of you. Sophie watched as Sam showed Maya a special sign, his hands forming what looked like a house, then opening into a heart. What does that mean? Sophie asked. It's a sign his mother created, Connor explained. It means home is where love is. It was their special way of saying, I love you. To Sophie's amazement, Maya repeated the sign, then rushed over and showed it to her mother. Something warm and frightening bloomed in Sophie's chest, the first crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. Her phone buzzed with an emergency alert, her face drained of color as she read the message. What is it? Connor asked. She showed him the screen. A video clip from the lobby incident was trending online. But it had been edited. The part where Maya signed back was missing. All that remained was Connor reaching for Maya and Sophie shouting, Don't touch my child. The caption read, CEO's daughter approached by janitor with criminal past. Connor's face hardened. Veritech. What? This has Victor Reynolds written all over it. Veritech's CEO. Connor's voice was tight. He did the same thing to me 5 years ago. Controlled the narrative, made me look like the villain. Sophie's phone rang again. The board demanding an emergency meeting. I have to go. Sophie, Connor called as she gathered Maya. This is just the beginning. They'll come after you next. The emergency board meeting was tense. Representatives from major investment firms sat stone-faced around the table. The timing couldn't be worse, said one investor. 2 weeks before IPO and our CEO was embroiled in a scandal with a janitor. It's not a scandal, Sophie insisted. Connor Reed is helping my daughter communicate. Connor Reed is a failed entrepreneur with a fraud accusation in his past, countered another board member. And now he's approaching your child. The optics are terrible. Dr. Eleanor Wright, elegant in her 70s with a lifetime of corporate battles behind her, cleared her throat. Perhaps we should discuss the real issue here. Voxbridge technology. The room went silent. What about it? Asked the lead investor. Eleanor fixed him with a steady gaze. I've had concerns for some time about the provenance of the core algorithm. If Connor Reed is the original creator of this technology, and if, as I suspect, Veritech acquired it through questionable means. That's absurd, interrupted the investor. Veritech is a Fortune 500 company. Size doesn't preclude predatory behavior, Eleanor replied. In fact, it often facilitates it. Sophie's phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. We should talk. Victor Reynolds, Veritech CEO. As the meeting continued, Sophie discreetly researched the original voice sign contract. What she discovered made her blood run cold. The signature on the transfer document was dated 3 days after Elise Reed's death. Connor had signed away his life's work while deep in grief. But looking closer, she noticed something else. The signature didn't match Connor's earlier contracts. It was close, but not exact. That evening, Victor Reynolds called. Ms. Hayes, his voice was smooth, confident. I think we have a mutual problem that could benefit from a mutual solution. What problem is that, Mr. Reynolds? Connor Reed. He's making claims about technology he legally signed away. It's unfortunate, but the man has a history of instability. Does he? Sophie kept her voice neutral. From what I've seen, his signature on your transfer contract doesn't match his other legal documents. A slight pause. I'd be careful making accusations, Ms. Hayes, especially with your IPO approaching. The market doesn't respond well to uncertainty. Is that a threat? A reality check. Veritech could acquire Brightmind at a premium. Your investors would be happy. The technology would remain in good hands. And this unfortunate situation with Connor Reed would disappear. Like his company disappeared? Like his wife? Reynolds' voice hardened. I'd reconsider your position, Ms. Hayes, before things get worse. After hanging up, Sophie sat in her dark office, staring at the city lights. She had built Brightmind to help people, to create technology that improved lives. But what if that technology had been built on theft and suffering? What if her success had come at the expense of Connor's life? Her phone rang again. Maya's school. There was a situation. When Sophie arrived at the school, chaos greeted her. News vans lined the street. Photographers crowded the entrance. Inside, Maya was huddled in the nurse's office, shaking uncontrollably, her breathing rapid and shallow. She had a panic attack when reporters started asking her questions, the nurse explained. We tried to keep them away, but someone let them into the building. Sophie knelt beside her daughter, trying to sign reassurance with her still clumsy hands, but Maya was too distraught to notice. The nurse suggested calling an ambulance. In desperation, Sophie called Connor. He arrived within minutes, somehow bypassing the media crowd. When he entered the nurse's office, he immediately knelt before Maya, his hands moving in calm, deliberate signs. Breathe with me. You're safe. Maya's eyes locked onto his. Her breathing gradually slowed as she focused on his hands. I'm scared, she signed back. I know, but I'm here. You're not alone. Her small hands formed another sign. The home is where love is gesture, Sam had taught her. Then she reached for Connor's hand and wouldn't let go. As they transported Maya to the hospital, the girl refused to release her grip on Connor. Sophie watched them, feeling both grateful and ashamed that a man she barely knew could comfort her daughter when she could not. At the hospital, Maya's condition stabilized, but the doctor recommended overnight observation. These symptoms are consistent with severe anxiety, he explained. Has she experienced significant trauma recently? A year ago, Sophie said quietly. Her father died in an accident. She hasn't spoken since. The doctor glanced at Connor. And you are? Her sign language instructor. Well, whatever you did worked. Her vital signs normalized as soon as you started communicating with her. Later, as Maya slept in the hospital bed, Sophie and Connor sat in uncomfortable chairs outside her room. "Thank you," Sophie said, "for coming, for helping her." Connor nodded, his eyes tired but vigilant. "She's a brave kid. How did you do it? Calm her so quickly?" "It's a technique I developed at Voice Sign for panic responses in nonverbal patients." He ran a hand through his hair. "It's actually part of the Voxbridge system now." Sophie was quiet for a moment. "The signature on the Veritech contract. It's forged, isn't it?" "Yes." "Why didn't you fight?" Connor looked at his hands. "By the time I realized what had happened, Elise was gone. Sam had lost his mother. Fighting a corporate giant would have meant years of litigation, more media exposure, more pain." He looked up at Sophie. "Some battles aren't worth the cost, no matter how right you are. But they stole your life's work. They're still profiting from it. And what would winning look like, Sophie? Money. I couldn't bring Elise back. I couldn't give Sam those years of his childhood again." Connor's voice was soft but firm. "So I chose peace instead of justice. I chose to be present for my son instead of absent fighting a war." Sophie thought about the past year, how she had buried herself in work, how she had been physically present but emotionally absent from Maya's life. How different might things have been if she had chosen differently? "But now," Connor continued, "they've brought the fight to us. That video, the reporters at Maya's school, it's only going to escalate. What do they want? They want to discredit me before I can threaten them. And now they want to pressure you because you're associated with me." He met her eyes. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Maya stirred in her hospital bed, her small hands signing in her sleep. "Will you stay?" Connor moved to her bedside, gently taking her hand. "I'm not going anywhere," he whispered, though she couldn't hear him. Watching them, Sophie made her decision. At dawn, Sophie called Dr. Eleanor Wright. "I need to postpone the IPO," she said without preamble, "and I need the board's full support for an investigation into Veritech." Eleanor was quiet for a moment. "That's a bold move, Sophie. The investors won't be happy." "The investors will be less happy if our core technology turns out to be stolen intellectual property." "What evidence do you have?" "Enough to warrant looking deeper. Connor Reed didn't sell his technology willingly. His signature was forged after his wife's death." She hesitated. "And I found emails. Lucas was working with Connor before the acquisition. He believed in this technology." "Eleanor." Another pause. "I believe you, but you'll need more than belief to convince the board." "I know. That's why I need your help." By noon, Sophie had assembled a team of Wall Street's top lawyers and forensic accountants. They worked through the original voice sign contracts, the Veritech acquisition documents, and the technical specifications of both voice sign and Voxbridge. Meanwhile, Connor received a termination notice from Brightmind's HR department, a board decision made without Sophie's knowledge. Within hours, news outlets were running stories with headlines like, "Brightmind fires controversial janitor after incident with CEO's daughter." Sophie was furious. She confronted the board directly. "You had no authority to fire him," she said, standing at the head of the conference table. "We had every authority," replied the lead investor. "This man is a liability." "This man is the reason our company exists," Sophie countered. "Voxbridge, the technology our entire product line is built on, was stolen from him by Veritech." "That's a serious allegation with no proof," said another board member. "We have proof." Dr. Eleanor Wright entered the room, followed by the head of the forensic team. "The signature on the transfer contract is forged. The coding architecture of Voxbridge is almost identical to VoiceSign's original patents. And we have records of Veritech representatives visiting Connor Reed in the days immediately following his wife's suicide." The evidence was damning. The board members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Furthermore, Eleanor continued, We have reason to believe Veritech orchestrated the edited video and media covers to discredit both Connor and Sophie. This changes nothing, insisted the lead investor. The IPO is in 12 days. We can't risk. The IPO is postponed, Sophie interrupted. I've already filed the paperwork. The room erupted in protest. You had no right. This is irresponsible. Sophie raised her hand, silencing them. I founded this company to help people communicate, to give voice to the voiceless. If we've built that mission on stolen technology, on someone else's suffering, then we are not the company I thought we were. She looked around the table. I won't be part of that, and I don't believe any of you want to be either. Eleanor smiled slightly. I've been in this industry for 40 years. I've seen companies rise and fall, but I've never regretted standing on the right side of history. She looked at the board members. The question is, where will you stand? One by one, the board members reluctantly agreed to support the investigation, all except the lead investor, who stormed out, threatening legal action. That evening, Sophie visited Connor at his Brooklyn apartment. Sam opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of her. Dad, it's Maya's mom. Connor appeared, surprise evident on his face. Sophie, what are you doing here? May I come in? The apartment was small but tidy, with bookshelves filled with texts on linguistics and child psychology. On the kitchen table sat a half-assembled prototype device, circuitry and components organized with meticulous care. You're still building it, Sophie said, gesturing to the device. Old habits. Connor offered her a seat. I heard I was fired today. That decision has been reversed. In fact, I came to offer you a different position. Connor raised an eyebrow. What position? Chief Technology Officer of Brightmind Biotech, with full recognition as the original creator of the voice sign technology. Connor stared at her. You're serious? I've postponed the IPO. We're investigating Veritech for intellectual property theft and fraud, and we're going to rebuild Vox Bridge. The right way, with you leading the development. Why would you do this? It could cost you everything. Sophie thought about Maya, about the moment in the hospital when her daughter had reached for Connor instead of her, about the walls she had built that had kept her from reaching her own child. Because some things matter more than success, she said simply. You taught me that. Sam appeared from his room, carrying a project he'd been working on, a small device with a speaker and display screen. It's for Maya, he explained. Dad helped me build it. It translates sign language into words for people who don't know how to sign yet. Sophie's throat tightened. This 8-year-old boy, who had lost so much, was still thinking about how to help others. She'll love it, she managed. Over the next few weeks, Sam and Maya became inseparable. While the adults prepared for the legal battle ahead, the children created their own world of communication. Sam taught Maya all the special signs his mother had created, not just home is where love is, but dozens of others. Brave heart, star thinker, forever friend. Sophie often found them huddled together, signing stories about their lost parents. One afternoon, she overheard Sam telling Maya, I talk to my mom every night before I go to sleep. Even though she can't answer, I know she hears me. Maya's hands moved hesitantly. I'm afraid I'm forgetting my dad's voice. I was scared of that too, Sam signed back. But Dad says we keep people alive by remembering them. Not just their voice, but their love. Sophie stepped away, her eyes burning with unshed tears. These children were teaching each other how to heal in ways no therapist had been able to reach them. 3 weeks later, the lawsuit against Veritech began. The courtroom was packed with media, industry observers, and Brightmind employees. Sophie testified first, presenting evidence of the forged signature and the technical analysis proving Vox Bridge had been built on voice signs stolen architecture. Victor Reynolds took the stand next, denying all allegations with the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to avoiding consequences. Mr. Reed signed over his company willingly, he insisted. His subsequent regret doesn't change that fact. Then it was Connor's turn. He spoke quietly but clearly, describing the development of VoiceSign, the partnership with Veritech, and the aftermath of his wife's death. 3 days after I found my wife, while I was making funeral arrangements and trying to explain to my 8-year-old son why his mother wasn't coming home, Veritech representatives came to my house. They brought papers they said needed immediate signature for the company's operation to continue. His voice remained steady. I don't remember signing anything. I was hardly functioning, but I know my own signature, and what's on that contract, isn't it? The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Sophie found Connor standing alone by a window. You did well in there, she said. He nodded, his eyes distant. It doesn't bring Elise back. It doesn't undo the last 5 years. No, but it might prevent this from happening to someone else. The doors to the courtroom burst open, and Sophie's assistant rushed toward them. You need to come quickly. It's Maya. They hurried back into the courtroom to find Maya standing at the front, holding Sam's homemade translation device. Dr. Eleanor Wright stood beside her, a supportive hand on her shoulder. When the judge returned, Eleanor addressed the court. Your Honor, Maya Hayes would like to make a statement relevant to these proceedings. The judge nodded, his expression softening at the sight of the small girl. Go ahead, young lady. Maya's hands began to move, signing with deliberate precision. The device in her hands translated, a synthetic voice filling the courtroom. My dad used to say that words can change the world. Before he died, he was working with Mr. Reed on a special project to help kids like me. Kids who couldn't speak. He believed in it. When the bad people stole Mr. Reed's invention, they stole my dad's dream too. Maya continued signing. Mr. Reed helped me when no one else could. He showed me how to talk with my hands. He wasn't scared of my silence. The synthetic voice paused as Maya's hands formed one final message. My dad was right. Mr. Reed's invention does change the world. It changed mine. The courtroom was utterly silent. Even Victor Reynolds seemed unable to maintain his composure, his eyes fixed on the small girl with the device that embodied the technology he had stolen. The judge thanked Maya and called the attorneys forward. Within hours, Veritech's lawyers were proposing a settlement, full acknowledgement of Connor's intellectual property rights, substantial financial compensation, and a public apology. 1 month later, Sophie stood on a small stage in the newly established Hope Speaks Center. Behind her, a banner read, Where Silence Finds Voice. When my husband died, she began, addressing the small crowd of families gathered for the center's opening, I thought I had to be strong by being invulnerable. I built walls to protect myself and my daughter, but those same walls kept us from healing. She glanced at Maya, who sat in the front row beside Sam. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is admit we need help, that we need connection. The Hope Speaks Foundation, funded by the Veritech settlement and Sophie's personal fortune, would provide free communication devices to children with speech disabilities. Connor would lead the technological development, while Sophie would handle the business operations. After the ceremony, as families mingled and explored the center, Connor found Sophie standing alone, watching Maya and Sam demonstrate sign language to a group of children. She's speaking more now, Connor said. The therapist says her vocal cords are fine. It's just a matter of time and feeling safe. Sophie nodded. She signed to me last night, said she remembers her dad's voice sometimes in her dreams. That's good. It means she's healing. They stood in comfortable silence, watching their children. You know, Sophie said after a moment, the first day I met you, I was terrified of your hands touching my child. She turned to face him. Now I just hope those hands never leave our lives. Connor looked at her, surprised. In the 6 weeks they had worked together to establish the foundation, They had developed a partnership based on mutual respect and shared purpose, but neither had acknowledged the growing connection between them. Sophie, he began. I know it's complicated, she said. We both have so much baggage, and the children have to come first. They always will, he agreed. But that doesn't mean we can't. He struggled for words. Sophie reached for his hand. Maybe we could try. Slowly. Connor's fingers intertwined with hers. I'd like that. Across the room, Eleanor watched them with a knowing smile. She had seen Sophie transform from a woman encased in ice to someone willing to risk vulnerability again. It wasn't just the company that had found its true purpose. Its founder had as well. Over the next several months, their relationship evolved with careful, deliberate steps. Sunday dinners at Connor's apartment became a tradition. Maya began spending time in their Brooklyn neighborhood, delighting in its unpretentious charm so different from her Manhattan world. Sam started attending a science program at Maya's private school, his natural brilliance flourishing with proper resources. They became a unit, not yet a family, but something moving steadily in that direction. Connor continued to wear simple clothes and drive his old car, even after the settlement made him wealthy again. Some habits are worth keeping, he told Sophie when she questioned it. They remind me of what matters. 6 months after the settlement, Maya spoke her first word out loud. Family. She said it during dinner at Connor's apartment. The four of them froze, then erupted in celebration. Maya looked startled, then pleased by their reaction. I've been practicing, she admitted shyly. That night, as Connor walked Sophie and Maya to their car, Maya ran ahead to look at a street performer playing guitar. Sophie turned to Connor. I never thought I'd feel this way again, she said quietly. After Lucas died, I was certain that part of me was gone forever. I know, Connor replied. I felt the same after Elise. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified, he admitted with a small smile. But Sam told me something wise the other day. He said, Dad, being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you do the right thing anyway. Sophie laughed softly. When did our children get so smart? Probably around the same time they started healing us instead of the other way around. At the Hope Speak Center's half-year celebration, Sam led a group of children in a sign language performance. As they finished, he added one final sign that wasn't part of the routine. What did he say? A parent asked. Maya smiled and answered aloud, her voice small but clear. He said that language isn't just in our words, it's in how we listen with our hearts. Sophie felt Connor's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining as naturally as if they had been doing it for years. In the golden light of the setting sun streaming through the Hope Speak Center windows, 4 people who had each lost something irreplaceable had found something new, a language of healing, of hope, and of home. Their hands spoke what words alone never could, and in the silence between signs they found their voices again.